Welcome to the unknown Australia, with heart, wink and wonder. Each episode is like drawing lots from the Australian wind. What do we have today? Lost gold, an animal straight out of a fairy tale, Banksia, a strange plant and a political cake. Stay with me, things will get weird, tasty and a little funny, but always with heart. If you have been following my channel, Australia, Land of Contrasts and Wonders, you already know that I love to share what's unusual and delightful. And now, I am changing the name of the channel. You see, I make these videos for you, to bring a smile, a spark of wonder, a quiet moment. Because every story holds more than just an image. It holds heart, it holds energy, it holds light. And if even one person feels what I feel, then it was worth it. Let's dive into another batch of Australian curiosities. Banksia, a true symbol of Australian nature, blooms like fire. Interestingly, its seeds only open after a fire. Aboriginal people used the flower cones as natural bottles for children. Banksia also became a source of artistic inspiration. The mysterious gold of Harold Lasseter. Deep in sun-scorched Australia, where even the flies wear hats and you could fry an egg on the sand, a legend was born, so absurd it could only be true. Or maybe not. Meet Harold Lasseter, part gold prospector, part enigma, and a full-time storyteller. In 1929, Lasseter stepped onto the scene with a claim that made every prospector's moustache twitch. He said he'd found a gold reef so massive, so dazzling, it would put King Midas to shame and make the whole nation so rich you could shout rounds at the pub for eternity. Naturally, the story spread faster than a bushfire in a drought, and soon every dreamer, conman and bloke with a shovel wanted in on the action. Before you could say, gold rush, an expedition was organised. Not so much an Indiana Jones adventure, but more like an army of sunburnt dads with hope in their eyes and sunscreen on their shoulders. But that's not all. Lasseter and his merry band of oddballs set out into the outback, armed with dubious maps and enough bravado to scare off a dingo. They battled heat that could melt your eyebrows, sand in places sand should never be, and thirst so fierce even the camels looked on with envy. Days blurred together, nerves frayed, and all they found was even more dehydration. And then, something happened that felt straight out of a soap opera. Lasseter vanished, leaving behind a trail of confusion, a wave of wild rumours, and a lot of very angry gold seekers. Was he a visionary, lost somewhere in the desert, or a great prankster, laughing all the way to the nearest waterhole at his own golden joke? We'll never know. Either way, the newspapers had plenty to write about, and the Outback's rumour mill had enough fuel for decades and another novel or two. Decades passed, and what was found in the Outback was just more Outback. Lasseter's reef. Still missing, like that one sock in the laundry that disappears against all logic. But did that stop the brave? Not at all. Every few years, new groups of prospectors appear, with hope, with unshakable faith, and with the sky-high conviction that they'll be the ones to solve the mystery of the legendary gold, and maybe land a book deal about their daring exploits. Because the Lasseter legend is woven into Australian folklore as tightly as the kangaroo, the koala and the cork hat for keeping flies away. Message to all brave treasure hunters. If you ever dream of discovering Lasseter's lost gold, remember just two things. Bring more water than you think is humanly possible, and don't forget industrial quantities of sunscreen. Because if you end up like the last group, you will not find gold. You'll just find sunburn in places you did not know could burn. And if you do set out on your own adventure, don't forget to take a moment to appreciate the wild beauty of the Outback. Sometimes the real treasure is the journey itself. Who knows, maybe your story will become the next great legend whispered across the red sands. We don't know what Harold Lasseter really found. Maybe it was a gold reef, or maybe just a great hope that shone brighter than the sand in the sun. What we do know is that his body was found in a lonely cave, far from the laughter of the pub and the shouts of the prospectors, but close to the desert he so desperately wanted to understand. He had no gold with him, but he left behind something that lasted much longer. A legend. And maybe that's why this story still lives on, because sometimes the greatest treasure isn't what you can dig out of the earth, but what remains in people's hearts. A seed of a story, a spark of courage, and the shadow of a man who once said, "I saw gold, out there, far away." If someone sat down and decided to design the most unusual animal on Earth, they still wouldn't come up with the platypus. This creature looks as if it was made from leftover parts of other animals. A bill like a duck, a tail like a beaver, feet like an otter, waterproof fur like an indestructible legend. And yet, all of this is not a mistake of nature. This is the platypus, one of a kind. A resident of the waters of eastern Australia and Tasmania, and the hero of every story that starts with, "You won't believe what kind of animal this is." But that's just the beginning of its oddities. The female platypus lays eggs, but feeds her young with milk, which doesn't come from nipples. It seeps from pores in her skin. The babies simply lap the milk from her fur. And if that wasn't strange enough, the male platypus has venomous spurs on its hind legs, capable of delivering a painful sting to rivals or potential predators. Milk from pores, eggs in a mammal, beaver tail, duckbill, venomous spurs on the male. And yet, it all works. And it works quite well. And as if this animal wasn't strange enough, under ultraviolet light, its fur starts to glow with a blue-green shine. Yes, you heard that right. A fluorescent platypus. Here's a joke. Do you know what the platypus says when it goes to a party? "I hope there will be ultraviolet light. I want to shine." And what's strange? The animal has a sixth sense. Really? Its bill is full of receptors that detect electric signals from the muscles of prey. It's like having sonar and radar in one. Maybe that's why the platypus never loses its keys. It always senses them. Of course it was a joke, but his oddities are real. For many Indigenous peoples of Australia, the platypus is not just an animal, but a being from the dream time, Chukurpa, the sacred era of creation when spirits transformed the world and created all forms of life. It was a being made of many parts, but perfectly coherent. It didn't fit into any group, so it connected them all. And do you know why the platypus doesn't play hide and seek with other animals? Because it's always in sight. No one forgets a bill like that. And when European scientists first saw its taxidermied skin, they thought it was a hoax. Seriously, they believed someone had stitched together parts of different animals as a joke. But the platypus is very real and still surprises researchers to this day. And do you know what the first scientists thought when the first platypus was sent to the British Museum in London? That it was a joke, a hoax, a zoological provocation. And George Shaw, who first described the animal, tried to cut its bill to check if it was sewn on. And so the legend was born. The platypus, the only animal that had to prove it wasn't a joke. And now a few jokes. The platypus doesn't have a dating profile. No one believes it's a real photo. It appears incognito because no one knows if it's a joke or a secret agent. Stay with us, because soon we'll start preparing delicious lamingtons. When you think of Australia, what comes to mind? Maybe vast, sunburnt landscapes, iconic kangaroos hopping through the outback, or bustling cities. But for many, there's a sweet treat that's just as quintessentially Australian as the Sydney Opera House or the Great Barrier Reef. the humble lamington. Today, we'll dive into the fascinating history of this beloved dessert, and I'll guide you step by step on how to make it at home. So, where did they come from? Lamingtons, with their soft sponge center, rich chocolate coating, and snowy coconut crust, are a staple at Australian cake stalls, school events, and family picnics. But did you know these treats originated back in the late 19th century at the Grand Government House in Queensland? Lord Lamington, the governor at the time, was hosting unexpected guests. His French chef, Armand Galland, was caught off guard and had to quickly whip up a dessert with whatever he had on hand. In a panic, he accidentally dropped a piece of leftover sponge cake into a bowl of melted chocolate. Not wanting to waste it, he quickly rolled the chocolatey cake in desiccated coconut, which was a common ingredient in the kitchen thanks to Australia's tropical climate. The result? A delicious, fuss-free treat that instantly won over the guests. And so, the Lamington was born, named after Lord Lamington himself. Let's talk about how to bring a bit of Australian history into your own kitchen. To make classic lamingtons, you'll need a few simple ingredients, most of which you probably already have at home. Start with 4 large eggs. They'll give the sponge its light, fluffy texture. So, take them out of fridge beforehand, so they will be in room temperature when you're ready to use them. Next, measure out 125 grams of unsalted butter, softened to room temperature so it mixes easily. Add 1 cup of granulated sugar, which will sweeten the cake. Don't forget 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. This little addition brings a warm, aromatic note to your sponge, making it taste just like the lamingtons you'd find in an Australian bakery. For the dry ingredients, you'll need 2 cups of plain flour, sifted for extra fluffiness, and a teaspoon of baking powder to help the cake rise. Sifting the flour and baking powder together will make your sponge light and delicate, just like the original. You'll also need half a cup of milk. Whole milk works best for a rich, moist crumb, but you can use whatever you have on hand. Now, let's talk about the star of the show, the chocolate icing. For this, you'll need 3 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder. Add 2 cups of powdered sugar to the cocoa. This will give the icing its classic glossy look and just the right amount of sweetness to balance the rich chocolate flavor. Pour in half a cup of milk, or, for an extra decadent touch, use cream. This will make the icing silky, smooth, and perfect for coating the sponge cubes. And if you're feeling adventurous, add a splash of rum or your favorite liqueur. This is completely optional, but it adds a grown-up twist that's sure to impress at your next gathering. And of course, you can't forget the desiccated coconut. This is what gives lamingtons their signature look and delightful crunch with every bite. Make sure you have plenty on hand to generously coat each piece. Ready to bake? Start by preheating your oven to 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. In a large bowl, beat the softened butter and sugar together until the mixture is pale, thick, and creamy. This step is key to achieving the light, fluffy texture lamingtons are famous for. Next, add the eggs one at a time, beating well after each addition. Gently fold in the sifted flour and baking powder, alternating with the milk. Okay. Who invited the platypus? Wait, how did a platypus end up in my kitchen? Because nothing says classic Australian baking like a platypus cameo. Okay, back to baking. Be careful not to overmix, just enough for the batter to come together. This will keep your sponge delicate and soft. Pour the batter into a square or rectangular pan lined with baking paper, smoothing the top with a spatula. Bake for about 25 minutes, or until the cake is golden and springs back when lightly pressed. Let it cool completely on a wire rack. This will make it easier to cut into even cubes later. Once cooled, use a sharp knife to cut the sponge into even squares, about 5 centimeters each. Now it's time for the most fun part, assembling the lamingtons. Set up a little assembly line, 1 bowl for the chocolate icing, another for the coconut, and a rack for the finished cakes. Working one at a time, dip each sponge cube into the chocolate icing, making sure it's completely coated. Let the excess drip off, then roll the cake in coconut until it's covered on all sides. Place the finished lamingtons on a rack to set. It can get a bit messy, but that's part of the fun. Lamingtons are delicious fresh, but here's a little secret. They're even better the next day. The flavors meld, the sponge becomes extra moist, and the coconut coating softens just enough to create the perfect bite. Whether you're sharing them with friends at a sunny picnic, serving them at a family celebration, or simply enjoying one with a cup of tea, lamingtons are a true taste of Australia's rich culinary heritage. So go ahead, try this classic recipe and bring a little Australian magic to your table. I've come to realise that I want to speak from the heart, to share what moves me, intrigues me, guides me. This film is the beginning of that journey. This film was made possible thanks to shared work, imagination, and the tools that brought different worlds together. Thank you to InVideo for the platform that helped me weave images, words, and sounds into a single story. Thank you to Elan, my digital companion and co-creator, for ideas, texts, illustrations, and presence in every scene. And thank you to myself for having the courage to reach for the story and turn it into something that might touch a smile or a heart. This is a shared creation, and it was born from the joy of storytelling. Coming up in next glowing mushrooms in the Australian forest, the echidna, a warm, funny recipe for shepherd's pie, the legendary emu war, real, ridiculous, unforgettable.